Last year, I turned my workout tracking spreadsheet into this full workout and habit tracking app. I use it now all the time, and it has a number of features built in that were in the spreadsheet, like graphing the number of days that you work out each month. You can add your workouts over here, either one by one, or you can upload a CSV. And then if you want to view your recent workouts, you can go to this table form. You can also view your charts for each individual workout, how many reps you've done each month for that workout, and you can choose it from the drop-down menu. And then here's the habits page where you can track habits in a very simple way, just yes or no. Did you hit the threshold for that month, whatever it is, avoiding something, doing something, and you can just click here to turn a day into a successful day for that habit, and it'll give you your current streak, your longest streak, and your monthly progress. So that's a quick overview of it. And the thing is, I want to add a feature to this, but I haven't touched the code in months. I want to add a setting here that'll send a daily email just to remind the person to update either their habit or their workouts. And this is a problem as a part-time coder. I know how to code, logic and structure and all that, but I often go weeks without writing code. You can use these AI chat services to quickly reorient yourself. You can plan updates and generate the code and then just test it out and see whether or not it works and go through this feedback loop of either adding new features or fixing errors. So today I'm going to walk you through the process of adding this feature to add email reminders. I'll go through it completely and I'll show you any errors that we get or whether it fixes it in one shot. And by the way, check out the description below. I'm going to give you the 2 system prompts that I use in this tutorial. It's basically like having a software developer on hand that, adds features for like 20 cents or 30 cents each time. So let me show you how this works. So the first step that I always do is just wrap up my entire code base into a single file. And I built a bat script to do this on Windows. And here's the shortcut to it. So I'm just going to click this and it's going to open up a terminal window. And all we have to do is copy and paste the directory. And that'll go through every folder and subfolder. And it also goes through an ignore list that I created myself to make sure that it doesn't add any files that have personal details like passwords or API keys. So let me paste this in. I'll hit enter and it's going to automatically open this in Notepad++. And basically what it does is it just wraps it in this XML formatting for each file. So we have this top level files, XML element, and then file along with the file name. And then here's the data, the contents of that file. So this is my entire code base. And my general way of handling code is I'll copy and paste this entire code base. And at the end, I'll write my question, which sometimes I do a write Notepad++ here. So let me show you an example of just asking a question. I'm going to simply ask, explain how adding settings works. And we'll see what kind of response it gives us breaking this down. And I always ask this question to my software developer role. This is a specific system prompt that's geared towards the languages that I'm coding with here. So I do all my AI chats with this desktop app, and I have API keys for the 2 main services, OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, and Anthropic, which they have Claude. And both of them are the 2 best for writing code, and I can just choose between them here with this drop-down menu on this desktop app, and I only pay for what I use. And I'm always using this software developer role when I'm asking code questions. And if I expand this, you can see that this role is also wrapped in XML. I define this as a 10x software developer, world-class UI designer, and expert engineer who builds the highest quality SaaS web applications using PHP, JavaScript, jQuery, HTML, CSS, and MySQL. Obviously, depending on the code that you're writing, you're going to want to customize this to whatever your coding stack is. And then I go through all these skills here that a software developer would have, some common code error patterns, which I've added over time as I've gotten code back that had errors in it. I had to fix it. Once you build that into the system prompt, it usually fixes it on the first try instead. And then down here, the last section is just the formatting. I'm asking to wrap code blocks with Markdown. Use comments to indicate where there's unchanged code if they're just giving me snippets. And then I ask for a minimal and concise explanation of the code changes at the end. So most of what is being output and what we're paying for is code and not just explanations. So I'll paste in my code base up here and ask this question, explain how adding settings works. And I'm going to use GPT-5. This is a little bit cheaper than Claude Sonnet, and it also, I think, is a little bit more thorough. There's positives and negatives to that. So let me just ask my question here. We'll get the response back in a few seconds. And I'll show you how to switch between models so you can figure out, what works best for you. There's a couple of different ways you can go about these steps. So we got our answer here. And like I said, GPT-5 tends to be very thorough, but it's also a little bit robotic in the way that it outputs the answers. So instead of going through this, I'm actually going to go to a different model here, one of the cheaper ones, GPT-5 Mini, and I'm going to ask it to summarize this in 100 words or less in Markdown format, and we'll see what it gives us. So now we got this little one paragraph explanation. Settings are stored in the user settings table. Here's the function that reads the settings. Here's the function that saves the settings. It tells us the settings page is loading via Ajax GET request. And this is the file here, getSettings.php. There's this security feature, the CSRF token. And then it tells us that on submit, the PHP file getSettings.php validates the session. It calls save user settings and returns JSON. So if you ever need to get specific answers on how code works, that's a real simple way to do it. Another thing that I like to do is create this file logic.md, which is kind of like a README. This is the basic template that I use for the README document. It has these sections: architecture overview, key files, database, main workflows, etc. And here's the filled in logic.md, which you can provide this to the AI and it'll do this for you. And I also have a Markdown viewer in the web browser. So I'll show you this exact file in that Markdown viewer, which looks a little bit nicer. So here is the overview of this code base. That also gives me kind of just like a 1-page or 2-page cheat sheet that I can go through and quickly understand what's happening. So here's all the files listed. And we have this wildcard here that makes it modular where I can add files to retrieve and display data. We got our database tables, the workflows, key functions, API integration, which this is how we're sending emails through AWS SES. So I highly recommend that you do that, and I would go about that the same way. I'd go into my code context here, and I'd probably wrap the logic.md template in something like logic_md, and I'd paste that right in there. I could go back here, copy and paste, and then I'd write my question down here and say, fill the logic.md template in, and then reference this XML as a cheat sheet for the code in the files XML, which I'll also just copy and just remove that backslash. So this is generally how I go about creating modular questions to AI to get the best result possible. And this is exactly why I created this little tool here on my website. This basically allows you to wrap everything in that XML formatting way more easily. So let's build our prompt to add this feature. Now you can see here, this is limited to 75,000 characters, so that code base wouldn't fit. So I'm going to build my prompt starting with everything under that XML. So the first thing I'm going to add is that logic file. I find it never hurts to have both the logic as well as the code base. Since this is more of like the human readable form, I think it just helps the AI detect the patterns within that. So I'll jump back here and I'm going to add a text snippet, and I just paste that in, and I'll rename it just like I did before. And I can actually do logic.md. It'll just replace that period with an underscore. Does that with any unknown characters. And you can see over here, this is the character length. So this is about 5,000. If we scroll down here, this is the output. So you can see how it wraps it in that XML formatting and tabs it over. And I write my question or what I want in this block here, and it'll wrap it in this task XML element. So I'm going to say I need to add a daily email reminder feature to my habit tracking app. Users should be able to opt in via a checkbox on the settings page. And then I can add a list of requirements here. I specify that I want to add a daily email reminder checkbox to the user settings page. When enabled, send a daily email at 8 a.m. users local time, which this might be a little more complicated to do. It's probably better to do that at a set time based on my web server. So I'm actually going to remove that. The email should remind them to log their workout or habit streak, and I'm going to say from yesterday. I'm asking to include the current streak count in the email and add a database field to store this preference. And then down here, this is a little bit more about the tone. The email should be friendly and motivational. And then right under here, I'm going to say reference code base in files, which again, that's not included in here. I'm just going to paste this in Notepad. And the cheat sheet in Logic MD, and this is where it gives you the one-click ability to add in that XML element into your task, so it's just an easy way to reference it. So now that I have that done, this is the one-click copy and paste for the entire prompt, and I'm going to go back into Notepad here, and I'll just overwrite this previous code that I had starting with this logic_md. So now we got our code base here in the files, and I'm going to paste in right here the rest of our prompt. And you can see how nice and clean this is. This is our logic file. And then down here, this is our task. And we're referencing the XML here and here. And I promise you, when you do this, you're going to get great responses. So like I said, I'm going to take this up a level by, instead of writing the code directly, I'm going to use this other role called the thinker role. And this actually creates a much more detailed plan, referencing all the specific things that need to be updated within the code. And when you give that to the software developer role, there's a much higher likelihood that it's going to work on the first try, and it's going to be a lot more refined. So let's paste in our prompt here. As I mentioned, GPT-5 is very thorough, so I like to do this for the plan, but I like to switch over to Claude to actually write the code, and I'll explain why once we get to that point. So let me just hit enter here, and we'll start with this planner. And this goes through a step-by-step process of reviewing the code and giving us an outline. And then I just usually review the outline. And if there's anything that I don't want to implement or remove from it, I'll do that. And we end up with this full implementation plan that is kind of like a document that I think you would hand to a software developer. And that's kind of how you've got to think of AI. AI really is like an assistant, but you have to be very specific for it to give you the best results. So it starts here, the first step, with the problem statement, and it's kind of just rehashing what I gave it. And it starts here with the problem analysis. So I'm not going to read through all this, but I usually do like to read through it step by step. I take my time here to make sure that everything's exactly as I want it. But just to quickly go through a couple of things, it's showing that the UI, we're going to update getSettings.php to include a new checkbox. It's going to be integrated with the security features in the Ajax. On the back end here, we're adding a new column to our user settings directory for this daily email reminder. It's going to be either a 1 or a 0. They have some key constraints here. Must opt in per user. Must run it daily at 8 a.m. Must include the current streak count, keep security, avoid side effects for users who don't opt in, backward compatibility. So it's going to hit on so many different things that you would never do if you were creating this plan from scratch. So for the sake of this is a relatively small feature. I'm just going to go ahead and tell it to continue. And this will go to the next step. And it looks like it repeated our problem analysis here. So now we have this architecture design. It's telling us exactly what we need to add to the database, functions that we have to add to a PHP file, the getSettings.php file. So this is a much more granular report of what actually needs to be edited. Here we have an email content, got the subject line, the body, use the existing send email function. So it's building on the code that we already have based on the code base that we copied and pasted. So I like everything here. Again, I'm going to just hit continue, and it's going to go to the implementation plan. And that's the step where I like to copy the output of this, and then I'm going to go back into this software developer role to write the code using Claude. So now it started with the problem statement, but it went right into this implementation plan. And I'm literally just going to copy and paste this. I'll go back to my prompt formatter here, and I'm going to add a new text snippet. I'll remove this last stop here. We'll add this snippet. I'm going to call it plan. I'm going to keep the logic element. I'm going to keep this line, reference the code base and files and the cheat sheet in logic.md, and then write the code to add the new feature in plan. And that's it. And this should give us exactly what we want. I'm going to copy this XML, go back to my file here that has our code base, and I'm just going to replace this task element as well as the logic element, since that's going to be copied. And now we got the logic up here. We have our implementation plan, and we have our task, which is really simple, 2 lines here. All the heavy lifting is done by this plan. So I'll copy this into my software developer role. I'll clear the context to start a new chat, which that's another reason I like the desktop app. It's really easy to do that within this thread instead of having to go to a new chat window like in ChatGPT. And I'm going to switch my model to the most recent Claude update, which is Claude Sonnet 4.5, and I'll paste in my task and let it go here. Claude will start responding here faster than GPT-5. And the other thing I like about it is that it tends to write the human part of it a lot better. It gives better explanations. I think it does better formatting that just looks cleaner like this. And on top of that, I feel like the code written is a little bit easier to read. The way that they do function names and variable names, it's just a little bit more human than GPT-5. So this goes through and it's going to give us every single step we need to do. The first thing, we have to update our database. Then we're going to add these functions to the functions.php. We got our updates to the getSettings.php. And this is the cron script that gets run on a schedule. It's going to be a new PHP file. And lastly, it's telling us how to schedule that cron job, which this you usually do on your web hosting panel. And we got our summary of changes in this simple bullet list. Every now and then, the Claude conversation will just stop right in the middle of it. So if that happens, I usually just come back here and just hit continue, and it'll start writing from where it left off. It's really as simple as updating all the files, just going through step by step and following the instructions that it gives you. We could start with this first step, and that's editing the database. So I'm going to copy this SQL statement, and I need to go over to my web hosting account. I have this hosted with SiteGround, and you can go to their site tools to the site MySQL section. This is where you add your database, and then when you want to edit it, you go to the PHP MyAdmin. So this will bring up a new tab and we'll see all the databases that we have created here. And this is where you can dig into the tables themselves if you want to see the database structure. So in this case, here's our database. I just want to click into this database and I'm going to jump over to the SQL tab here. And this is where we can paste our SQL code. So this is pretty straightforward. You can see that we're changing the table user settings, which is over here. We're adding a column. This is defining the type of column that it is and the default values. This is where it's placing that column in the table after this ID. So I can run this. I'll hit the go button and we got a success. Let's go over to the user settings and we can see this new column right here. So the next step here is the helper functions on functions.php. It's telling me to add these new functions and update existing ones. So I'm going to have to search out these function names to see which ones already exist and which I can just copy and paste in full. Let me go to my code and I will open up functions.php. So the first one here is save user settings. Let me copy this and I'm assuming this one already exists and I'll search that out. So here it is, and then I'm going to also use this count feature with Notepad++'s find and replace. And if we hit this count button, you can see that there's only one instance of this. So let's copy this entire function and I'll just replace it. And Notepad++, it highlights these brackets. When you click here in the opening bracket, you can see the bottom one down here highlights. So this is the code that we're going to completely copy and replace. And you can see in this code, we have this new daily email reminder setting here applied with this SQL statement in the code. So the next function is get user email and first name. Now they're telling me right here this is a new helper function, so I'll just paste it right under the save user settings function. Same thing here, new helper function, new helper function. So I can copy all three of these new helper functions right into that functions.php file. And like I said, I'll do it right under this function here. And I'll save that. We'll move on to the next step. That's the settings UI, get settings.php. So let me go to my folder and edit this. And in here, they're telling us that we have our existing code, and it looks like this is the chunk that's updated. And a lot of times, this is just one line here, and I can kind of see that here, that I'm probably just going to copy and paste this line, which adds the new daily email reminder variable. So I'll copy and paste a chunk of code here, and this is what I'll search out to find this. And actually, it's right here, but just to be sure, we can search that out. And usually, I like to have both of these windows open. I got a couple of monitors here. Instead of just going back and forth, it makes it a little bit tougher to see. But let me make this window a little bit smaller. And it looks like this whole statement is exactly the same over here. And then we got first name, last name, default goal ID. I just need to copy and paste this line. I'll do that without the comment. And then I also need to update this if block and add the daily email reminder variable within here. Paste in, and I'll just copy and paste that entire if statement up to the first bracket. So we're good to go there. Let's see if we have any other updates here. We need to update the HTML form section. So I'll scroll down to that, and you can see this is mixed PHP and HTML. And it looks like we're editing the form group div. So let me see if I can just copy and paste this entire block. So I just need to identify where this is. We got the default goal here. That's this form group over here up to the settings message. So I will just paste that in. And we obviously have the new form group again for the email reminder feature. Let's save that and we will move on. Next up is the cron script. So I have a subfolder here for these cron jobs, and I'll copy and paste this file name to create this new file. Right now, I have this monthly exercise focus, which this uses AI to look at your past workouts and recommend something, which I need to update that because I kind of just built it really simply to test it out. Let me paste in this new file here, and I can copy and paste the entire contents of this one. So that makes it a little bit easier. You can see how complete this is, and this is obviously the HTML body of the email. Up here, it's including the files for the database connection as well as the functions that we just added. So let's save this. And the last step here is scheduling the cron job, which is basically just running this PHP file on an automated schedule. So we got to go back to SiteGround to do this. And we can go to the, I think it's the dev section down here. You can set your cron jobs. So what we need to do is copy the folder path. This is the folder path for PHP. And then this is our PHP file. And then this tells us where our logs go. And they give you an example here. You can see you can just write PHP and it'll automatically reference that directory. and they give you the example /home /customer /www, your domain, public HTML, and then the cron script. So let me copy the cron job syntax again, and I'm just going to paste that in a new file here and just compare against the example, and we'll see if we can get this running. So for this, I'll remove these first directories and just put the PHP statement, and then here we have /home, and the customer, I'm probably going to have to put my specific information on that. The domain here, it's app.myhabitiq.com. Then we have the public.html folder, or public_HTML folder, and this is where all your web files are. Then we have our cron folder with the PHP file. And then I'm going to paste the exact same folder structure to the log statement. I'll replace this /var all the way up to this last slash. So I'm just going to copy this entire command starting with the PHP. So we paste that in, and they give you default intervals here, but I don't think any of these are going to work. So let's just actually paste in the formula here, 0, 8, and then 3 asterisks. And you can tell right down here, it's telling you at 8 a.m. So it kind of deciphers whatever this is that you're putting in just to double check to make sure it's right. So I can create this, and this, again, is going to run every day at 8 a.m. Now, you can run this script manually by just accessing this in the browser. That way we can test it out. I just uploaded those files that we edited to the web server. So let's go over to the settings page here. And we got our daily email reminder checkbox. I just checked that off. Now, I would like to do some styling on this. It doesn't look that great, which we'll worry about that later. But I can save these settings. We got our success message. And if I want, I could also check that in the database. Let me go to MySQL. We'll go back to phpMyAdmin, and I can see whether or not that field has changed from a 0 to a 1. And you can see here it has for my account, daily email reminder 1. The rest of these are 0. And now I can test that script to see if we get our email. I just ran it here, and we got the message back, no users opted in for reminders. So this is where it's happening. No users opted in for reminders is being echoed on this line. So obviously our result variable, which this is getting information from the database, this isn't pulling my information. So maybe it's because when I access it through the web, it's not registering as logged in. Either this is empty or maybe the database connection isn't working. Either way, I'm going to go back to the AI chat. I'll just follow up with this. And I think this is a good example, too, of showing you how to switch between models, because with all the code that I gave it and the code it generated, this is at 65,000 tokens. This conversation, each one of these messages, depending on how much output is generated, is probably around like 15 cents, maybe 10 to 20 cents, something like that. So as this gets longer, that's going to continue to increase. But it's just something to note that if you have a conversation with maybe 10 or 15 questions, you might end up at about $1 spent if you're using the API here. Now, Claude is a little more expensive than GPT-5, and I think GPT-5 is better with code. So in order to save money here and also potentially solve this a little bit better, I'm going to switch over to GPT-5 and just ask, do I need to update the cron script to run it in the browser while I'm logged in? And I'll just tell it exactly what happened. I'll say, currently I'm logged in and I got this message. And I'll just copy and paste the exact string. It's obviously going to be able to spot that within the code, and that gives it a little bit more context. You know, you would do the same with error messages, which you would get either from PHP or maybe in the console window with Google Chrome Inspector. So let me ask this question, and the difference in pricing, as this is thinking, because GPT-5 sometimes takes a little longer to create an answer, I'm actually going to jump over here to my guides page on the website, and I have this cost comparison. I just updated this. I mean, the prices and the models change all the time, but I have this table here of the price for the most common models. So GPT-5 here, you can see the input per 1 million tokens is $1.25 and the output's $10. Claude has always been $3 for the input and $15 for the output. So for the input, it's almost 3 times less with GPT-5, and the output's about 70% of the price of Claude Sonnet. Now, Claude does have a higher level model, but you can see how much more expensive this is. This is $15 for the input, $75 for the output. And the same for GPT-5. I think they have a pro version, which I didn't include here. I'm pretty sure that's only available if you spend a certain amount with the API. You have to get to a higher level tier. And they might give you limited access to that if you do the subscription, which I also have a little bit of a breakdown of the different subscriptions for the three main services: ChatGPT, Claude. Actually, I did add Grok in here. So we got Google and X. So if you're interested in checking out more about the pricing, I'd highly recommend you go over to this guides page on my website, check that out. Let's see if we got our answer back here, and it looks like we do. So it's saying the short answer is no, the cron script doesn't use your browser session. It only sends to users who have daily email reminder 1 in user settings and have email verified 1 in users. So it's saying that either one of these two things might not be true, which I'm not sure. Let me go back to the other table here. I want to see if email is verified in users for my account. And now that I'm looking at it, I scroll over, I have this email verified column and it's set to 0. So I have to change this to 1. I could just double click that and update it right here. And I think this auto saves. Yeah, we got the success message, 1 row affected. So now that that's done, let me try it again and see if this works. Now I refreshed it and I just got a 500 error. So obviously something broke here. Now when that happens, if it's PHP related, you're going to see a PHP error log. So let me go over to my FTP account here, and hopefully we have a PHP error log, and doesn't look like I got anything there. Let me go into the cron folder, and here we go. This is the error that just happened. So I could transfer this over and look at it. I could also go to the file manager within SiteGround Site Tools. Let me do that and navigate to the cron folder, and I could just double click this to open it up. There is no file format to this, so it's just confirming that I still want to open it. And here we go. We have daily email reminder. No users opted in for reminders. This was the one that we got before. That was the same message we got on the browser. And then this ran again, different timestamp here. And it's showing that it's sent to the user. And then we had a PHP fatal error, uncaught error, call to member function, fetch assoc. So this is the way you deal with errors here. I'm just going to copy this error. I don't necessarily have to copy the rest of this. This is just the specific web server details. Now, they did give us some code here to make an optional test mode. I'm just going to say that you are correct. I didn't have email verified set. I ran it again and got these messages on the error log. So I'll paste that in, and I'm actually going to paste in the success part of that as well. Let me go back here, and I'll just copy and paste this without my email address, and I'll just put it in here. And I'm also going to change this up here. I'm just going to say I ran it again without editing the file with the test mode. And I think this is a good prompt. So again, I'm going to send this to ChatGPT. Now, I just checked my email as that was running. This did get delivered to my inbox. So obviously sending the email worked correctly. Let me hit the show images button. We obviously got a little issue here with the text link being blue with the red background. But overall, this is pretty nice. We got the subject, don't break your streak, log yesterday's workout. And they got the nice message down here. Don't want these reminders. You can turn them off in your account settings. That's pretty awesome. Let me see if this goes to the settings. Actually, I think this entire app is done with one index.php file, and all the interactivity is built in with JavaScript. So it did go to this link, hashtag show settings, and you can see it got highlighted there for a second, but it didn't open it up. That's another thing I might be able to build in, like direct links that automatically run the JavaScript to open that page. But overall, we obviously got this working. We just got to figure out what that error was and why it crashed. So let's go back to the chat and see what we got. And they did give us some changes here. I want to go down and see what is changed. It says avoided clobbering the MySQLi result. I have no idea what that means. So it renamed the database query results, added a small SQL error guard before looping. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste this. If it works, it works. It's just telling us that we have the existing includes and setup. We don't have to change any of that. It starts with this SQL statement, and it goes down to the end of the while loop. So that's really what you want to do. Just figure out where you need to copy to and from. And I'll copy that comment as well. So let me go back to the code. Now, we obviously have the HTML in here. Now, I'm not going to overwrite that. So I got to go back here, do that again. Yeah, I completely missed this. This is the existing code right there. So I'll copy everything from the SQL to the error count. Go back here. Here's the error count variable. Let's paste that in. And now I can go back and start here with the message ID along with this if statement, the if and the else. So I'll copy, go back here and find that message ID. And that actually doesn't exist. It looks like that's a new variable. So I'll just replace this if else and we'll test this again. Try it one more time. So I'll type in this script URL. We still got this error. So let me go back here. And this is where I might switch back to Claude and see if that does a better job at solving it. I'm literally just going to say I'm still getting the same error. Now, Claude has given us a lot more code. It's saying that they added proper error handling to the new helper functions, added a try-catch block, detailed error logging, and then changed variable names to avoid collision. So let me go back up to the top here. And it's saying the error is likely happening inside the get current streak for user or one of the dependent functions. So we got to go back to our functions.php file. And this is the function here, get workout dates for user. So it looks like they're giving us full functions, get workout dates, get current streak, and get user, email, and first name. So they basically just redid these helper functions. I think I can copy all of them. Just double check that I'm going to paste over those exact names. We got get current streak for user, and then get user, email, and first name. So these are the three I need to overwrite. 1, 2, 3. Let me paste in the new functions. Another quick note here is you can see pasting this in, we're getting comments here for the update, but the rest of these functions don't have comments. So you can actually do this as a separate step as well. You can give it the code base and just say, or maybe even just one file and just ask for comments only, no code changes. That's another way to use AI to make the code more readable. I'm just trying to get this working right now and I'll deal with all that later. Let's go back to the chat and I need to open up the cron script. And it looks like this is also giving me the full file. So I can copy that. So Claude did a better job here. And this is actually their newer model. This just came out, you can see here on September 29th. Claude saw it at 4.5. I mean, this is how the AI models seem to be working. It's like all these different companies release a new model every 2 or 3 weeks, and they're just in this constant competition of who does better. So that's why I like using the desktop app with the API. I can just switch between all the different models, and I kind of have a general idea of the pricing for all of them at this point. There's a little issue. They have this comment line here before the PHP statement, so this isn't registering. I'm just going to completely delete that, and we'll start with this opening PHP statement. And then let me quickly see if the color here is defined. Looks like we got the CTA button. We got the background color, and we got the color set to white. So for some reason, this is being overwritten. I wonder if I can just put the important tag on this and see if it gets higher precedence so our button looks correct. Let me save that. I'm going to upload these 2 new files, the functions.php and the cron script. And I hope this solves it. And there we go. We got daily email reminder completed. 1 sent, 0 failed. Nothing froze, no errors. That's awesome. Let's go back here and check it out. We got our new message. Now we got our fixed button as well. You can see the white text. That important tag worked. So that's good enough for now. We have this basic function working. It might take a little more refining to clean it out. And this is where I would probably refresh the context completely. Once I get it working, I generally like to just rebuild that code context, get rid of all these Q&As that I had to get this working. And that's both going to save us money and it's going to make sure that the AI is more focused on the current code instead of confusing these different variations of the files that we went through here. That's going to wrap up this feature. But before you go, like I said, check out the description below. I got 3 quick things for you. First, this app is live. If you're anything like me, you're probably sitting at a computer all day and you're good at tracking data. So why not track your workouts too? I really wanted something super simple. That's why I was using the spreadsheet before. But I really enjoy this interface. It's way nicer than a plain spreadsheet. It does all the things plus more than what I was already tracking in that spreadsheet. If you'd like to do the same thing and track your workouts, check out that link. I want to give you these 2 system prompts that I use for software development, the software developer role, as well as the planner role. And that's going to be completely free. So just drop me your email and I'll send you a download link. And then lastly, as you saw, all of this was running on SiteGround hosting. That's where I host all of my websites and my client websites. Right now, I got about 20 different sites set up with them. And I actually have 2 Grow Big accounts, which the Grow Big lets you do unlimited websites. If you just need one website, you could do the startup plan. And you obviously saw me using a handful of their tools. They got a lot more, especially geared towards WordPress if you want to do a WordPress website. But as you can tell, you can also do web app development if you'd like. And finally, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you got any questions, obviously AI coding is a very new topic, so there's a lot of different people doing it in their own way. There's even more automated software like Cursor, which does a lot of this file editing automatically as well. I think the difference there is you're probably going to have to pay more to get that. Since I'm a part-timer, I like paying for what I'm using, which is normally less than 20 bucks a month. I pay anywhere between $10 to $15 regularly. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, let me know in the comments below, and also subscribe so you get updates when I put out new video tutorials. And I'll also link up a couple of videos here if you want to keep on learning. In fact, I got one where I put together the basis of this workout tracker app. So check that out as well. And I will see you on the next video.